Welcome back. Another episode of Dynasty Theory hitting you bright and early on the Sunday morning after the NFL Combine. This is going to be a fun episode. It's an exciting one.
Yep.
Dan, what's going on, man?
Good morning, guys. Man, I feel like I'm in the science lab right now, formulating rankings, quarterback situations.
Rankings!
And most importantly, evaluating these rookies. But I want to start with a question for you both and those in the chat. I was hoping to ask before the show, but you guys are just busting your tail this morning, double dipping 2 shows in a row. So trade offer here. Would you do it? I'm going to let the two hosts here and our listeners decide whether I'm going to make this trade live on the air. Okay.
All right, let's hear it.
I was offered for Tank Dell and Jaden Reed. It's 12-team Dynasty superflex, your normal scoring.
Start 2 or start 3 wide receivers.
Start, I believe 3 to 6. Yeah, start 3 receivers. Right. So they want Jaden Reed and Tank Dell, and they are offering Jamison Williams, Rashid Shaheed, and pick 107 of this draft.
No.
107 is the key to me. I need quarterback help, and I know even if the quarterbacks go heavy, then that means maybe a Brock Bowers or stud receivers coming to me that's I think is better than these guys. But
I just have no interest in Jamison Williams.
I'm shocked.
Like, obviously, Tank Dell could be a stud. I think durability is a little bit of a question, but he's in a great situation. Jaden Reed looks like a stud, but there does seem to be a lot of receivers there. I think 107 is definitely better than either of those two. But by how much? Could Williams do enough?
The problem with the 107 is you might not get a QB there. You might want to get a QB, and then you might have to go into the veteran market with that. So I would say no right now. If that was on the clock at 107 and maybe McCarthy's there and we get a good landing spot for him, then pull the trigger. But right now, if he gets a good landing spot, maybe he's the 105 or the 106 in drafts. Then
what's the tight end premium?
It's 2-0.
So Bowers will be gone.
So Bowers probably is gone. You hope he slides, if not a quarterback. There's 4 guys you get. If it goes quarterback heavy and Bowers is gone, then that means one of those elite receivers are sliding.
Yep.
Yeah, you'll get Malika Room.
You know what?
I would not do the trade as it's set right there.
I'd do it.
I personally would not. So this is of no help, Dan.
No, it's of help because I said yes.
Gotcha. I mean,
we always know John needs the little bit more. Dan used to be like, hey, he needs something to tell his mom about in trades, right? John's right. Like, I need something to tell the world about in trades.
And I think looking at the chat too, a lot of the feedback there, they're leaning towards not doing it. So I think at a minimum, it's, hey, counter offer time. And hey, I just hope to get things stirring. We're going to be having a lot of talks on this show today and other shows about picks like that 107 and what you could get for it. So I'm going to craft a counter and I'll get back to everybody.
The 107 right now, right? So it is a 2 tight end premium, it's a 2.0 premium league for tight ends, right? So you have Caleb's going to be gone. May's more than likely going to be gone. Jaden's more than likely going to be gone, right? Bowers is more than likely going to be gone. Marvin Harrison, probably same. So you're going to be left with either Neighbors or Rome or JJ McCarthy there. I believe Rome is already a better receiver than Tank Dell. So for me, if I can replace Tank Dell with Rome, I will do it in most leagues, to be honest with you. That's already the 107. And then it just depends on how you look at Reed compared to Jamo plus Shaheed. That's how I look at it.
And McCarthy could definitely help that roster. Again, there is a need for another quarterback. I do like McCarthy. I'm on that kind of side of it. I love those receivers. That's tough. It's a tough one. That's why I thought it was a good one to propose today.
As that trade stands right there, I would not accept that. Okay. All right. We'll talk about this more in the chat. We're 5 minutes in, guys. I don't lollygag. You do.
You act like we don't spend 30 minutes on the first player we talk about each week.
Well, you know what, Mitch?
Yeah.
You lead us because these are your show notes.
John. I like it. John. Well, we'll see how this goes. This might change in 5 minutes. You'd be like, yeah, you don't know what the hell you're doing. So we're going to go with this. So we're really going to break down the combine today, right? And we're not going to really go into, hey, what did you see about certain players? We're going to talk about the overall topics on it. first thing, I think the most important thing coming out of the draft this year is what's going on with Justin Fields, because that is shaping what's happening through the landscape of in the NFL. Because if the Bears trade out of it, then all of a sudden that other team gets Caleb Williams, and how do the Bears build around Justin Fields? But as of right now, everything is pointing to Justin Fields being traded. That's what it's looking like. It doesn't look like for a second that the Bears aren't going to trade him. But at the same point, it's also being said that the market for Justin Fields isn't really there. So the question that I wrote down the show sheet were, it looks like he's being traded, thoughts on the landing spots, and if you are willing to acquire him at cost, which is close to the Dak, Love, or future first, future second type of value. The only thing I'll add is I believe we are putting every single Justin Fields egg in the Atlanta basket. I think if the Atlanta Falcons decide, you know what, we're going Cousins instead, then I don't know what you do with Justin Fields, because I don't think there's another good landing spot for him. But I'll kick it over to John, because John has not talked for almost 6 minutes and 30 seconds.
He's on a drought.
Anticipating how well this is going to go.
I'm just it's nice every once in a while just to sit back. It really is. I talked a lot on our episode of the Pivot Point. Yeah, Mitch, I think you're right with all dynasty managers looking to put their Justin Fields eggs in that Atlanta basket. I think that's spot on. And we talked about this in the Discord a little bit. How much of an impact, and you guys can answer or, just store it away and, think about it later. How much of an impact does it have on what the actual NFL market is on Justin Fields? I talked about it, if we see there being a market and he goes for a second plus, that looks very different from an optics standpoint when you compare that to maybe a third or a couple of fourths. I'm not saying that's going to be the price, but he does still need to perform whatever he's traded for. They need to make a decision. The team that trades for him, they need to make a decision relatively quickly on that 5th-year option. The timing, it really is similar to the Sam Darnold to Carolina. They traded a second plus, and there was an overpayment, obviously, especially the way it played out, but you need to decide a year in advance on if you're going to exercise that option. So you trade a third plus, maybe you don't exercise that option. That looks very different from a dynasty market perspective than a team trading a second plus and exercising that option now. Doesn't necessarily lock him into the longer term starting role with whatever team trades for him. No, but it certainly looks a heck of a lot better. So for me, I see a lot of comments in the chat out on Fields at cost. Fields to Pittsburgh would be good. Love the player. He's in a tough spot, but might have to fall in value a bit more and then buy. And then Atlanta, but the offer is only a 4th-round pick. Take it or leave it. No other offers. Like, now he needs to perform if there was no market and he doesn't play well in 2024. So for me, from a dynasty perspective, I went out. I think I blasted out 40 trades over the last couple of days because there was a big conversations in the big conversation in the Discord, and it was either my Tua for Justin Fields. Everybody wanted to keep Justin Fields, and most of these leagues +6, -4 scoring for quarterbacks. Or I did 106 straight up. I did 107 plus. Very few counters. I got one counter, and nobody was interested. And then if you try to move Justin Fields, you're not going to have any luck there either. So I think people are just, if they have Justin Fields, they're keeping him. If they don't have him, they're really not too interested in acquiring at that 104, 105 price. But I've kicked the tires on 106, 107, and no movement. So I think we're at a standstill.
Dan, you on Fields, you were the guy last year who was saying, hey, he's a quarterback or he's a running back playing quarterback. He's, and it kind of showed throughout the year that he wasn't all the way there, which is why the Bears are going to move off of him, right? So I'm guessing you don't have a lot of shares. Are you willing to go out and get him right now with the hope that he goes to the Falcons, with kind of being worried that he ends up on the Commanders?
This is an interesting one. And hey, I'm rocking the Justin Fields Georgia jersey today, man, because it just feels like he's going to Atlanta. I think that'd be a great story to tell. We don't know that, but I'm optimistic. Even if he didn't go to Atlanta, I do like other potential landing spots that he could go to. I think I was really hard on Fields a lot in the past because everyone's like way high up here on him at those times, and there were still struggles. Now that he's kind of coming down here a little bit, I'm a little bit more interested because as we look in fantasy, here's a guy who missed 4 games last year and still in the middle pack of scoring. If he could go to better situations, stay healthy, per your notes there, Mitch, in our show notes, I would move a future first and second to get Justin Fields because we need quarterbacks. And you look at the state of the NFL, teams need quarterbacks. And I think whoever trades for him is going to invest in him for at least 3 years. Give me 3 years of Justin Fields production, and hopefully it works out. So I'm buying. The whole Dak Love conversation gets me a little bit nervous. So, I'm a little obviously biased on the Dak talk, and Jordan Love's hot right now. So I think there's a bit more security and stability there. I'd probably rather those guys. So I'd rather go and kind of dangle some draft picks and try to acquire Justin Fields that way.
Yeah, for me, it's hard because I think if Fields goes to Atlanta, his value is going to go up, and it's going to go up all off season. But you play the little game of what if he goes somewhere else? If he goes to the Steelers, it's probably the same. He's probably going to game because they have enough weapons around him. But what if it's Tennessee? Or what if he just goes to a backup job? What if it turns into a Trey Lance situation? I'm not saying he's as bad as Trey Lance. Just the situation of he goes to be a backup for another team with the hope to be a starter. Then all of a sudden his dynasty value is gone. So I just think it's something that we don't talk about a lot. But Dan, you're the coach. I want to ask you, hopefully it's not the old man, yelling at the kids in the front yard. But what are your thoughts on the top 3 quarterbacks just not doing anything at the combine? And really, Daniels just flat out left the combine early. He was there for a day and left.
Well, you threw me a curveball here, switching gears so quick there. JB's probably got 15 more minutes of Justin Fields in him there. He's stepping back to look at this. He's just relaxing. He is enjoying the show. Man, based on what we know, and I think that's kind of the key thing. We don't know everything that's going on inside those, meetings at Indianapolis and scouting and who's happy or not happy of who's working out or not. I think it is a bucket list thing for me to go to Indianapolis. Maybe there's a Dynasty Theory trip in the future. I'm not sure. It's going to be Fantasy Football Expo this year, but man, I am itching to go to Indy, guys. I'd love to be talking to some coaches and players and that kind of thing. But I don't think it hurts them as much as it kind of opens up some opportunities for other prospects. Like if I'm a coach in the NFL, I've already watched countless hours of film. My scouts have loaded me all kinds of information on this prospects. I just need to verify some things. I need to spend some time with these guys. I know they're going to have a pro day, and I'm going to get all of that no matter what. But these guys don't show up. Now there's a few other quarterbacks there that are getting the spotlight right now. And if they take advantage of that opportunity, there's going to be that coach out there or a coordinator out there that's going to fall in love with that kid, and it might help them. So, it doesn't necessarily hurt them, tremendously. I don't think it's a bad thing that they're not running a 40 or not participating in certain drills, but it does open up some doors, I think, for some other guys that'll get a favorable evaluation.
All right, John?
I think it has more to do with opening things up for the other quarterbacks. I think they have the chance to show out. They don't have the shadow of these top guys cast over them. But I know everybody wants to bash Caleb Williams. I know that's what everyone's doing. That's the cool thing to do. It's the fun thing to do for a lot of people. These are still kids. They are kids, okay? And I can't imagine the pressure and the stress, and especially for these top guys, the expectations on their shoulders. And everybody wants to go out and bash the kids, all right? Except for Bo Nix. He's a man. But like if you're Caleb Williams, if you're Drake May, if you're Jaden Daniels, what benefit is there for you to go on the field and throw the ball at the combine? Your stock can't go up. It can't. If you were, and I'm sure we're going to disagree a little bit. Well, we want to see these competitors.
That's funny.
Great shout out, B4. That's a fantastic comment. Are these kids afraid to compete? Great shout out for a Twitter conversation there. But when it comes down to it, you could talk about it from the quarterbacks only, but with Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, does it really benefit them whenever they're already all but locked in to be where they are? You see all these guys, people pulling up limp, they pull something. You see people blow out an ACL or an Achilles during workouts. If you can limit that and you can limit the potential negative impact that something may have, and sure, you could say, well, these kids aren't looking to compete. They are a little bit worried. But if there is far more risk than there is potential upside, I honestly have no issue with these kids not taking part. Now, leaving early, that you're invited to the combine.
Yeah.
You should take pride in that. You should want to be there. You should want to talk to the coaches, talk to the scouts, whoever you're able to talk to, be there with your peers. You should want to be there. That's strange to me.
That was the only thing that these guys go back to last year. Bryce Young didn't throw. CJ Stroud had the best combine that anyone's ever had, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't matter. They went the exact same way in the draft. So at the end of the day, I don't think it matters for these top quarterbacks. But I do think if you watch that Xavier Worthy run last night, Caleb Williams was there celebrating with him. JJ McCarthy was there celebrating with him. Daniels was, I don't know where he went, but he wasn't even at the combine anymore. Right. I'm not saying that means he's going to fail in the NFL. I just think the optics of it do look a little bad.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think as a coach or a scout, I want to see how they're conducting themselves. Okay, so you're not throwing. How are you interacting with coaches that day if you are still there? If you did leave early, why did you leave early? How did you handle that? Like, there's so much information that they're mining to because these are big investments. Again, does it help them or hurt them? Probably not. But again, there are teams that are going to be there, and we'd have to really zero in on situations to say, hey, I'm between this position or this position. I didn't get to spend as much time with you. Our organization's now going in that other direction. Or two players of similar value, I'm going with that other guy because now I am starting to fall in love with this prospect who's doing everything the way we ask him for. I thought it was funny too on Twitter. I shared a post of Milton, the Tennessee quarterback, shorts, t-shirt, gunning it, firing it. And I thought it was so funny because former quarterback of mine posted on there. He goes, his senior year, he's in high school versus us in the playoffs, and he was atrocious. And he threw a punch in the second half was ejected. Those are the things that, again, I want to spend with. If I am looking at this Milton guy there, has he matured? Has he grown up? Again, Twitter universe is just loving this rocket arm that's, that we're seeing throw the ball 80 yards down the field on air with no pressure. I want to dig into those things at the combine.
And then, you talk about people leaving early and kind of potential, I don't want to say character concerns, but some things to look at with these kids. Meanwhile, you have people like Najee Harris, whose flight was canceled for his pro day at Alabama, found a way to get there, wasn't taking part in anything on the field, but wanted to be there with his teammates, wanted to talk to whoever he could talk to there. I think that sticks out to people. Yeah. All right. And, I think ultimately it is a business decision. That's what B Ford made the comment. And I completely agree. If there is more risk at you taking part in these on-field events, then there is potential upside. I have no issue with you sitting out.
The one thing that I do have slight issues with is like a guy like Braylon Allen goes out and does everything. The one thing we're worried about with him in the NFL is what's his 40. He doesn't run a 40.
That
flat out tells me in training, his 40's been terrible. They're like, you're not running that. You could do everything else, but you run a 4.7, because even if he ran in the 4.5s, they're going to have him run because that's a great time for him. So how bad is it in training for him to be like, no, I'm going to do literally everything else, but I'm not running a 40. So for
Well,
me,
you remember when Albert O ran the 40, popped off,
he's like,
he said, I'm out. It's
good.
like in Seinfeld, he pulled a Costanza, end on a high note. Thank you all. Thank you. I popped off the charts, but I'm not doing anything else because I came here what I did to do. And Braylon Allen, he came here to do the other activities, and he necessarily didn't stand out.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that kind of thing worries me as far as the Marvin Harrison sitting out, Neighbors not doing it. Good for them. They did everything they need to do in college, and they don't need to go out and prove themselves in one night in Indy. You know what I mean?
Mitch, before we move forward, I think I love the point you meant on that 40. I don't know if it's necessarily saying his 40 is going to be terrible. I think it just leaves us hanging until his pro day, because he's going to have to run it eventually, and he's going to run it. And if I'm a running back, I know every 10th matters. So if I know you buy me another 3-4 weeks, whatever it is, until my pro day, because I'm going to be in just that little bit better shape, and I'm working with these specialists, I'm hammering the work, it might work out good for him, but it does leave us hanging. And in the fantasy world, if we're having a draft right now, we're definitely concerned for sure.
Yeah. So while we're talking about running backs, my running back one is Blake Corum. I've said I might move off of him for Trey Benson. I might. But as of right now, Blake Corum in my first round. Dan already threw a flag. So Dan, why am I wrong? And I swear if you say Jalen right, I'm going to start to cry.
Wait, can I make a comment here?
Please.
I got to say, Mitch.
Yeah.
These segues, these transitions have been top notch.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I might be on the left-hand side of this screen moving forward. The view's better over here. It is.
I love it. Mitch is on point for sure, man. For sure. No, Mitch, my issue with Corm, and I've been waiting to bust your chops on this, because I think you have
wrong.
Conviction, and I love that. And you're still researching. You said, it could change as we go. But my issue is not that maybe it is my issue that he's your number one, because I don't even have him 2 or 3. He's 4 for me right now, with potential to be 5 or 6. So that is my struggle with Blake Corum. And I'm still studying too, so I could tweak a little bit. I remember last year when I was deep into the running back studying, and I was watching his film heavy last year because I thought he was coming out, and he didn't. And I wasn't that high on him last year. And he had a nice solid senior year and everything. Definitely would draft him. I'm not saying, hey, he's not going to be a good football player or anything like that. But I do not have him as a top 3 running back right now. My number one right now is, I'm kind of like 1A, 1B. Okay. It's between Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson. I'm really liking those 2 dudes. I need to watch more film. I want to see them block. I need to see more of that. That's a big thing for me, because I don't want any reason for their production to be slowed. But man, Brooks's vision, and just he can catch the ball. I think he's a 3-down back. He's got great balance. Benson just seems so fundamentally tight. Just popped off a 4.39 40 at the combine, I think it was. Looks super quick. So I'm starting to fall in love with those 2 guys a little bit, man. And the other guy who's kind of one of those guys that normally in like past years, like a Ramondre Stevenson type, where he's not the top back, and he just, I don't think he's had enough production yet. But Marshawn Lloyd, like, he just seems like a beast on film for me.
I like Lloyd a lot.
He's really catching my eye.
Yeah. So one thing real quick with Jonathan Brooks, how worried are you with his injury?
Obviously not enough to have him number 1, but it's something I want to definitely dive into more. I'd have to dive in more to give you a strong opinion there, Mitch.
John, it's all yours. You had Estime pretty high. Is it Estime, right? That's how you say his last name.
Till that 40. Woo!
Well, listen.
Him and Kyron hand in hand
all over again, JB. It's happening.
This is my thing with Notre Dame running backs. I fall in love pre-combine, pre-draft, and then they disappoint at the 40. Estime, it was a bad estimate of his 40 time. The expectation coming in was not a 4.71, but I had a tier of 4 pre-combine. So things are super close.
So you have a 1 now, though.
I have a 1.
Okay.
And it is Benson. All right. But I want to this running back class as a whole, the thing that everybody's pushing, well, it's not a great running back class. And we've talked about this so many times. We just don't have that super high end option. Last year, Bijan and Gibbs. 2022, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker was right there. Etienne and Najee in 21, JT, Barkley, Chubb, Christian McCaffrey, Fournette, Mixon, Dalvin. Like, we just don't have that back that really is pushing for a 102, 103, 104 in rookie drafts. But a lot of that is just coming down to the way people play Dynasty. A lot of that is coming down to the strength of the wide receiver class, the strength of the quarterbacks. Everybody's falling in love with these different quarterbacks. The top 4, JJ McCarthy really creeping up as well. And that's pushing down these running backs. And it's not just the value of running backs that's really impacting it, but it's the way they're being utilized. It's the way we're getting more and more committees. It's the way we're able to go out and get these dirt cheap running backs as viable weekly options throughout the season. This class, for me, I think it projects very closely with that 2019 class. Jacobs, Miles Sanders. We're not going to get a first-round running back. I mean, but
Okay.
Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, Pollard, Singletary, Damian Harris. We are going to get usable backs. And, that class, these running backs weren't like, oh, that's my 101 in superflex rookie drafts. It just didn't happen. But we are going to get production. There are a lot of good running backs here that are going to need the opportunity. If you don't get the opportunity, it doesn't matter. But enough of the production profiles, enough of the testing measurables and the metrics, it's there. And you look at going back to 2003, it's draft time, baby. 2003 is my year. Day 2 or better, sub 4.540, translating to at least a speed score of 114 based on their size. And then a minimum, I like my backs that can catch a little bit, a minimum of at least a 5% receiving college dominator. We have Antonio Gibson, Jonathan Taylor, DeMarco Murray, Breece Hall, J.K. Dobbins, and Trey Benson. That's the list. That is it. So he went from my top tier of running backs to my running back 1. And it's not like, oh, he popped off the charts with his 40 time in the 4.39. I moved him up 10 spots. He was in my tier 1, but there is that separator. Running back class, Geis says, is very landing spot dependent. You need opportunity. As much as we always say landing spot doesn't matter, but you need opportunity. And landing spot doesn't matter as much for wide receivers in general because you have more players getting more opportunity. For running backs, for quarterbacks, you need that chance.
Which is probably the main reason why me particular love drafting after the draft.
It minimizes that risk.
It minimizes that risk, running back and quarterback position. I completely agree. And because we've seen it happen too often. We fall in love with a back and then he gets drafted in the 4th or 5th round, or gets drafted at a team where no matter what, he's got to split carries and is probably on the back end of that split of carries. But JB, I like that you like Benson, and I love that stat that you shared there. Like I said, it's kind of like a 1A, 1B between Brooks and Benson for me, with Lloyd being the guy coming up. But I think if they do get the good landing spot, boy, this is the year where it's not a Breece Hall kind of, Kenneth Walker type pick, but you're going to get some good value with those quarterbacks and running backs quarterbacks, receivers, and Brock Bauer pushing these guys back to the back end of round 1 or early round 2, which I think is your next question, Mitch.
And think about with
do
the running backs
at the back end of round 1, right, JB?
Yeah, I'm not there yet, but
that's the JB I was waiting for.
No. But think about the running backs that have been producing and maintaining value. They're starting to age out.
Yep.
And that's why Bijan, Gibbs, Breece Hall, even Jonathan Taylor being drafted in 2020, these guys are holding value and they're creating that separation. McCaffrey, he's a freak. He's a unicorn. But everybody else, Father Time ultimately is going to win that battle. And we see it in their values. I mean, even guys that are producing, like a Barkley with the expectation with a new landing spot if he stays healthy. There are opportunities for these backs, even though we're going to be seeing committees, even though, maybe they don't have that fantastic wart-proof profile that some of these guys may have had, but they should be getting that opportunity.
So the reason why I asked this, because I put currently in there for a reason, because here is my thoughts on what's going to happen once the draft takes place. Let's say, for instance, which I think is a high likelihood, the Chargers move on from Eckler, right? Eckler's on a different team next year. I don't care who is drafted to the Chargers. I don't care if it's Corm. I don't care if it's Benson, whoever you like. That running back is all of a sudden going to become the running back one. It just is. The talking point will be, this is what Harbaugh's offenses do. Greg Roman also loves to run the ball. So then all of a sudden, how high does that guy go? I mean, if it is Trey Benson, he could end up being the running back 6 in Dynasty, and while being a second round NFL pick. So as much as I'll say I like Corm, you guys like Benson, whichever way you want to throw it, landing spot is going to matter so much this year because all of these running backs have so many, not a lot of flaws, but they all have flaws to where we don't have the one guy who's going to walk in. We're like, oh, don't worry, he is going to take over the backfield. This draft is going to be, oh, hey, he's going to have the backfield because there's nobody else there. Right. I think there's going to be a lot of Tank Bigsby kind of Kendre Miller kind of backs this upcoming year to where they go in behind a starter. They're good backups, but as far as Dynasty goes, you could probably get them next year for cheaper than what you're going to take them in the drafts this year.
Well, let's play let's, you're saying where could that top running back go? And I do think if one of these top 3-4 running backs happens to go to the Chargers, they're probably going to be the running back one for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the narrative is there, the Harbaugh narrative, the way he likes to run his offense. Greg Roman, of course, is there now too. And let's say, just for the sake of this discussion, Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze go Giants in Tennessee. Let's just say. Mm-hmm. And then you have, for the sake of this discussion, John already saying Chargers will not draft a running back. Very well may not. But for the sake of this discussion, let's say those 2 wide receivers go where I just mentioned, and then you have the running back go to the Chargers in the second round. B Ford says at the 69th pick, or would they go at the 106, which, obviously is going to be a little bit different based on the perceived value and all that good stuff. If they go to the Chargers, there is a case to be made 106.
Depending on league settings. I mean, it's definitely in the late first round.
2 PPR, 12 team superflex flex, start 10 plus 6 minus 4. You're probably going to get the top 3 quarterbacks. You're going to get Brock Bowers and you're going to get Marvin Harrison, I think. Now, let's say Marvin Harrison would go to New England. You're going to get some people that might pull that trigger on that running back in this situation. All hypothetical. I think it would be interesting. Brooks 56 to Dallas, Corm 106 to Chargers. I mean, Cowboys are going to be another sexy spot too.
Yeah,
I've seen their running backs.
I was hoping they'd get a running back last year, and I thought it was interesting. Jerry Jones' latest interview, he said Tony Pollard, the scouts, coaches, they said he had a good season. Dallas definitely has a schematic O-line issue right now, but still doesn't mean they're going to resign him. He may outprice himself, but who knows what that running back market is. I think this running back conversation is really important because as a dynasty manager, it's kind of becoming like quarterbacks. It fluctuates, and it's so fragile that, you could go from a good running back situation to a bad one on your dynasty roster pretty fast. But yeah, Dallas is an attractive spot. I'll cross my fingers, boys.
And there was a comment earlier I wanted to point out. Will this class beat out the number 2s on teams like Eric Gray?
Yes.
For me, there are a lot of running backs in this class that kind of would fall into that Tyjae Spears. They would fall into that Kendre Miller type, but profiles overall. And we're going to see a lot of running back options. Especially, like, we always want to sit here and fantasize about Cowboys, Chargers, Houston. They're all drafting a day 2 running back. If it were to happen, we'd see a lot of running backs get into that back end 1, early round 2 range. And I think it, like I said, that Tajay Spears, Kendre Miller type situations, even a Zach Charbonnet, where you get a running back, Mitch, you said it earlier, you get a running back that lands in a crummy situation that has another day 2 running back just taken. So I do think there are a lot of options in this class that are better than teams' current running back 2s.
Yeah. So we spent good 20 minutes on running backs, which is good because that's the part that everybody hates in this class. But as far as the wide receivers go, we have the top 2 in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, who they were at the combine. They didn't run. They didn't do anything, right? We had all the running backs run, so we saw all of them on the field. But now you have Rome, who ran really well. Xavier Worthy did his 40 and left. Ladd McConkey was awesome. So, Dan, who was your standout from the combine itself, not taking in their college or anything that happened, just what happened over the weekend? Who was your biggest standout? Because that's probably who's going to move up rookie drafts.
It's tough to say who the biggest standout is. I'm still kind of diving in, but at just quick glance, Mitch, like, it just seems so Captain Obvious. That's why I'm a little not excited about this. But like Rome, man, like right there with that, I went into this thinking, hey, he is right there, top 3 guaranteed. Harrison's going to go. I think Neighbors is going to go. And if I'm at that, a little bit later in the first, where not a little bit later, like 6, 7, whatever, I would be stoked to get Rome. And I wanted to feel that. And like his shuttle run time was a 4.03, which is just super quick, man. Like he is going to be tough to cover in the National Football League. So to me, he's a just guaranteed bona fide stud, and you're going to be happy with him in the first round. So he's kind of my big standout. But how could you ignore Worthy's 4.2 140? Like, and he was a good receiver going in too. I think that's an important thing to say. It's not like he's a Joe Schmo from Idaho who ran a 4.21, and now we're just talking to him just because it was 40. He was a good receiver that ran a 4.2 140, and man, speed wins in the National Football League. And I'm sure he's went up some draft boards in real life and Dynasty. So I look forward to getting a hold of Worthy. Ladd McConkey's my boy because he's from Georgia. But I just say to anyone drafting him, like, he had back injury, like the back issues in Georgia that were just kind of lingering. And it often would take him out of games, or he'd go out of a game and come back in a game. So I'm a little bit curious of his medicals. Like the guy, I think he could be a good NFL receiver because I do believe he put up some good numbers. And he is a good receiver, but health is a concern. He's got NFL genes too, man. He's got some good genetics there.
So with Ladd McConkey, I think outside of Rome, he was the best wide receiver on the field at the combine. Like how his 40 went, his splits went, how he did what they call it, the gauntlet drill. He did that perfectly, but he did miss a lot of time in college. How's that looking in your sheet so far as how he breaks down compared to the other wide receivers?
Are you talking John's spreadsheets?
Yes, John's spreadsheets.
Spreadsheet, man. Let's go. Ladd McConkey. How are you dissecting those numbers?
He is, so typically when I go through my metrics and all the numbers and the spreadsheets and the colors,
John was just talking dirty to us, Mitch.
A little bit. He's going to have to shower again.
He is the one that it's tough to go off of his numbers from college because I think the way he played, the way NFL teams view him, I don't think his stats necessarily are indicative of how he's going to perform in the NFL. That is my way of saying, compared to how my threshold scoring spits out, I had to move him up compared to that. Right. So he's the one outlier because, like you said, Dan, like he didn't play a lot, like several games, he wasn't in there for the entirety of the game. So it's not like you could look at his numbers and say, okay, well, it's skewed because he missed entire games. Like he still technically played those games. So on a per game basis, it doesn't look great. And you look at all the market share numbers, but this is the player that I think film is going to ultimately prevail compared to strictly looking at a spreadsheet. He's the one that is bumped up for me when comparing those. Now, the biggest standout for me from the combine, I think Brian Thomas was incredible.
Dude's a stud, man.
I mean, 6'3", 209, 4.33. He probably put himself up into a top 20 pick if he wasn't there already. And he is my wide receiver 4. And previously, I believe I had like a 4, 5, and 6 tier together, but Brian Thomas is now that 4 for me. And this is somebody that the guys over on the Dynasty Theory YouTube channel over on Fantasy Effect talked about this past week. But Ricky Pearsall, I think out of Florida, you know, he runs a 4.41, you know, slot rate not extremely high, like to necessarily say, oh, we can only play the slot, but 57%. I think he's somebody, like, looking at the numbers, looking at the comps, the collegiate profiles. I think he's a slightly taller Jaden Reed.
He had a 4.05 short shuttle too, JB, which was right next to Rome. I mean, like, I can't tell you how, like, that is a fast shuttle time.
I think he's a slightly taller Jaden Reed, and I think he's somebody, based on like the interviews, it sounds like he nailed them. Based on all of the other on-field workouts, I think he kind of puts himself up into that second round of the NFL draft. But he was a big winner for me. And if I may, to talk about this class as a whole, kind of how I did with the running backs, like, I think this wide receiver class, it rivals that 2014 class.
Oh, definitely.
Watkins, Evans, Beckham, Cooks. I know Kelvin Benjamin fizzled out, but had a strong year. Devontae Adams, Allen Robinson, Jarvis Landry, all those guys going in the first or second round. I think this class is going to be there. And, you know, looking back at previous years, like 2020, you have Jefferson and Lamb. 2021, you had Chase, Devontae, and Waddle. 2022, Wilson, London, Olave, Burks, Jamison, Dotson, all in the first round. I think with the way the contracts go and the value of the position, we're going to see 7, 8 first round wide receivers and in the NFL draft. And we're going to get not just quality, but those high-end studs. And I see the comment that somebody has Brian Thomas as their wide receiver 3. I'm not there, but that gap closed. He is that one that closed that top 3 versus the 4 through 6. And he closed that gap for me. So I really do think this is going to be such a fun class. I can't wait for the NFL draft. Hopefully it's not like, what was that, last year, 2 years ago, where the end of night 1 got very fuzzy for me. And, you know, because of all the wine that I was able to indulge in. But I can't wait, guys. I can't wait.
Do you have any information? I don't know if you've spent any time on Luke McCaffrey. I'm so intrigued being CMC's brother. He ran a 4.02 shuttle, which was faster than Rome. He ran the faster 40 than CMC. You know, between his dad and his grandfather coaching him. I know he went to a small school in Rice there, but like I'm dying to dive into his film a little bit more.
Right now, I couldn't spend a third on him, but more so it speaks to the quality of this class. And we talk about quality until we get to the tight end position.
John, that was my segue. I hate you. I was going to be, hey, we've had the good running back classes and we kind of get this. Now we're having a great wide receiver class compared to last year where we had JSN and whatever after that. And now we have this tight end class to where we have Bowers. And I think, John, you like one tight end after this. I was talking to Dan about this last night. I like Bowers and no one else. I mean, I'm attacking the veteran tight end market heavily in dynasty leagues because I don't really want anybody after Bowers in this draft. So, John, is there anyone we're missing?
Well, let's preface this with my comments from last offseason. And, you know, I was going to pull some receipts here.
No,
I wish I made a graphic.
Okay, never mind, Dan.
No, come on. I said last year was a historic class. and Sam Laporta was a historic tight end.
Greatest tight end ever.
But this class for me, you have Brock Bowers. I really think it has a 2022 feel for me. Okay. And what I mean by that, you had Trey McBride, who was far and away my tight end one. Now, what are you like?
He was. I know. No doubt.
Far and away my tight end one. But then you had Dulcich, Bellinger, Ferguson, Jelani Woods, Kadon, Cole Turner, Isaiah Likely, Chiggy, Jalen Wittermeyer. He is just wrapping up his 40. In my notes, I actually put in bold Jalen Wittermeyer joke just so I could
remember when he was
one.
like a second round NFL pick for a long time.
And then he ran off 5 seconds.
It was so bad.
Anyway. But this has a 2022 feel for me. I think we're going to get some like Tucker Crafts, Dawson Knox. I even think it feels a little bit similar to 2021. You had Pitts, Freiermuth, and then nothing. Like there was nothing. So for me, it's Brock Bowers, Jatavian Sanders. That 4.69 doesn't really scare me away. So it's still Jatavian Sanders for me. And Theo Johnson, Tip Ryman, even though the whole bird conversation with him, I couldn't draft him, I think, just because of that. But Theo Johnson and Tip, they athletic profiles galore with those two. The big winner for me, Benson, and they're talking about in the chat from Kansas State, athletic profile. I talk about these different guys like Trey Benson getting out of that group to solidify himself for me as the running back one for now. Brian Thomas solidifying himself as the wide receiver 4 for me for now. Benson, he's the one that is now the tight end 3 for me. But whereas last year I was saying, I want this tight end 1, I want this tight end 2, this 3, this 4, I want the tight end 50 in this class. For me, it's like, if he's there at the end of the 3rd and 2 PPR, sure. But I'm not actively reaching. Like there's so many wide receivers, running backs. Even if like you get some of these guys like a Spencer Rattler, depending on where Michael Penix goes, see what happens with Bo Nix. I don't think he goes in the 1st, but depending on where he goes in the 2nd or 3rd, I would much rather take upside shots on those guys as opposed to several of these tight ends. There's just those athletes, but there's not a lot of strong profiles for me. And I know, you look at the relative athletic score and that RAS, it is very indicative. It's a good key indicator from a minimum threshold standpoint of what you should be looking at with tight ends. But it's going to be very difficult for me to really love a lot of these tight ends. I don't think Jatavian Sanders necessarily hurt his stock from an NFL perspective. So because of that, he stayed exactly where he was for me. But yeah, that's where I am on the tight ends.
I think you hit your word count. I think you went over. You were doing good. I'm just kidding. No, I agree with JB. I think that was a good synopsis, man. The only maybe challenge flag I'd would be putting Benson it up to like your tight end 3. He's just a guy that was off the radar. I still don't think he has like prototypical size. I know he has some good numbers. I think he definitely you could make a case, one of the best risers at the combine, putting on some good scores. But Bowers won clear as day. And then it's everything you just said. I'm kind of trying to dive into who, might, if given a good opportunity, could rise up. And I do think Jatavian Sanders and Theo Johnson, although obvious, are guys that could be good NFL players. Theo Johnson may be the riser for me. I go back to that short shuttle run. I just think it's such an invaluable statistic where, hey, you're trying to separate from man, or you're trying to find those pockets in the zone and could do some different things. Theo Johnson went and ran a 4.19 short shuttle. He weighs 259 pounds, so he's not like some of those receiver tight ends. I get a little worried when they're in the 240s because they're not going to be able to stay on the field and block somebody. They got to get on a hoagie plan really quick and put some calories on. So Theo Johnson's intriguing. He had a good senior year with 7 touchdowns at Penn State. He ran a 4.57 40. He ran a great shuttle. He's got some weight on him. I wish I could see how much these guys bench, but I don't think they benched at the combine, or at least it's not showing it for the tight ends on the NFL app, just to see kind of how strong they are. So could they be physical and not have to come off the field if you're an inline tight end. But Bowers, then I'm really diving into Sanders and Johnson.
Yeah, and I think Cade Stover too. I don't want to leave him out. I think he showed out well, and I think Jared Wiley, from an athletic profile standpoint, he ran a little bit faster than I was expecting, and he comes in, I think, a little over 9.5 from a relative athletic score. Probably a 5th or 6th round NFL tight end, but George Kittle went in the 5th. So you don't necessarily need to get that 1st or 2nd round draft capital, but if you go in the 6th, 7th undrafted free agent, it's an uphill battle to ultimately give any type of production. But so I think there's some intriguing ones, but not the conviction certainly that I had last year. Just one more shout out to my call last year. That's all. That I couldn't take in the third.
To sum it up real quick, so after Brock Bowers, there's really no one to draft.
Final thoughts.
Okay, for episode 235,
I was ready to talk more.
That was me. Okay, John, this is a final thought. You haven't had to do this before. It's a quick thought just to sum up any topics you have going right now in Dynasty.
Anything you saw from the combine, don't double count it if it was already expected. But if it's new information, if it's something that we weren't expecting, certainly adjust. But do not double count based on the previous expectation.
Dan?
Good job, JP. Hey, just listeners, take this episode and continue to build on it. JB continues to update his spreadsheets in the Discord there. Our chat discussion over these rookies will continue right up to the rookie draft. Hopefully we get some more numbers from pro days. And again, there's a lot to learn yet. So don't get stuck on a guy saying this is where I'm going to draft them, because a lot could change between now and when the time comes.
Hey, this was fun. I should do this again. But thank you for everyone for joining us. I would like to tell you when we will record this week, but it seems to move all the time. But we will be live again this week. Just pay attention to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Don't know if John mentioned earlier, but we are a proud partner of Dynasty Daddy. It's an amazing site to go to for Dynasty. Please just try it once. You'll continue to go back to it. But for John and Dan, I'm Mitch. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.